Hey traders, so just another quick recap for you guys for Thursday, May the 26th, my Emini S&P 500 futures trading, and not a bad day here. I only traded a couple hours, mostly kind of focusing on some of the training and stuff with the students I work with, and not a lot of trades in here that I did take, but still an okay result, a couple points. Any day that you're making some points is a good one. It's only a few trades. There's not really enough in there to probably have a really excellent result like we saw yesterday. But worth mentioning as well that 2 points, that's good. A lot of times you hear in this business that 2 points a day, aiming to make 2 points a day or 10 pips a day in Forex. And I don't really subscribe to that because I think it's almost a limiting sort of approach. If you have that as your goal, a lot of times people will stop there, and then every trade just takes on that much more weight and that much more emotion because of how important it is to getting that 2-point goal. And often it really limits people from, when the market's moving well and confidence is high and trading's going well, it limits people from getting those better profits that they probably should get in those sort of environments where they stop at 2 points where they should be getting 5 or 8 points or something like that. So it's also something that you just don't have a big enough sample size of trades in a single day in most cases to really have something statistically significant. So aiming for a couple points a day when your edge doesn't necessarily get a chance to play out can be quite harmful, especially to new traders. So I tend to look at things more on like a weekly time frame and allow enough trades to let the edge play out, basically. So in here, things started out early on with basically some sideways chop stuff in the pre-market, pretty range bound overall, nothing too clear, and a pretty clear area up in here though that had reacted in the pre-market as well. So we pushed up into there a little bit, but there just wasn't enough momentum or a clear enough opportunity to try and trade back into that and in towards yesterday's high. But we had a good strong move down here, a good swing, and worth taking a chance on. Didn't follow through. Not much you can do there from a trade management perspective, but worth trying to latch onto that type of momentum, especially after an area responds that can bring in some fairly significant supply into the market, and definitely could carry down a little bit further. But wasn't quite ready to go. Needed to test again before it made its move, and then unable to latch onto this one, and gave it a try. This became a lot more difficult to trade, a lot more dangerous to trade as it kind of held multiple times in here. But did try to get in early where it is safer if possible. But sometimes, not able to get the fill on that, and I'm okay with that. Sometimes there's a missed opportunity there, and that's part of using limit orders like I tend to do. But then you also know exactly where you're going to get your fill and where you're going to get your price, and that's a really beneficial thing in terms of planning and keeping risk low. And so I'm willing to occasionally miss out on the odd trade in order to have that better defined entry location and risk and that more structured approach to my trading. So no such luck on that one for getting filled, but then push down here, pretty likely to get another test with some pretty good momentum into this area. Fairly minor area here, at least initially, until it started to hold a little bit more. So once we were testing into here, I was looking for potentially a clean break and maybe a run down to this next area. So I had in mind that we might get a little bit more of a run, but we had already seen some slowdown in here, already a higher low, getting some chop. So it's a lot higher chance, much higher percentage to kind of hold in this area and snap back. So basically, as soon as things were holding in here, just took the profit off the table. Potentially gave up a couple ticks in order to see if we get that run, but I knew going in that was a possibility, and I was willing to do that. So it to me was worthwhile if I ran this trade 20 or 30 times, and I always think in terms of bigger samples, that giving up that 2 ticks would probably allow me to get some runners that would pay a little bit more in that long term. So I'm willing to do it in that sort of scenario. And then from there, we pushed our way up, got a good long here. We were heading into an area that we had seen a lot of trading around this, I think it's a 90 area here. So we'd seen a lot of trading around this area. We were kind of flipping around it, so I was concerned that this might hold, so aiming for a little bit less in here. Actually tried to get the 2 points initially, but then just took a little bit less when I wasn't able to get that fill right away. And then from there, we had another decent move down that I was willing to trade if we got an immediate pullback while momentum was still high, but not willing to trade later as momentum was decreasing, because this was a pretty clear area of support here that you got to be aware of those risk factors and make sure that you're playing it safe. So, not a lot in here, like I said, just a couple points, but only a few trades. So for the limited amount of trading that I did in there, I'm perfectly happy with the result, and overall been a very solid week so far. So that's what I think of, as I mentioned earlier. Think in terms of that bigger sample size of trades. Think in terms of that bigger picture. Makes it a lot easier to trade than when you're focusing on the outcome of every individual trade and the individual day, because then every win or loss becomes that much more substantial. So having that sort of bigger picture focus doesn't necessarily have to be that broad. You don't have to be thinking in terms of months or years, but just a little bit bigger picture focus does help to make the emotional aspect of trading a lot easier, and a lot easier to just kind of follow your plan and not worry about the outcome of every single trade. So I hope you guys did well on this one, and looking forward to seeing how the end of the week goes here. Hopefully another good one to wrap up the week on a very positive note. Thanks, guys.